It's the ability to maintain a balance of certain processes or state in any system. Perhaps the best-known definition of sustainability or sustainable development is the definition given by the World Commission on the Environment and Development. This suggests that sustainability is defined as forms of progress that meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Sustainability in industry is perhaps now best monitored and supported by looking at the triple bottom line, covering the three components of environmental responsibility, economic return, i.e. wealth creation, and social development. Many companies now realize and monitor these three parallel strands to secure their position in rapidly changing climate or environmental legislation and stakeholder concerns. Stakeholders. Who are they? Stakeholders are you, individuals, groups, or corporations with an interest in the initiative succeeding in its objective of a sustainable sugarcane industry. They include producers, traders, retailers, consumers, trade unions, social NGOs, indigenous groups, government researchers, academics, and certifying bodies. It was in the environment of words such as sustainability, greenhouse gas, water preservation, etc., that the BSI was born to ensure the development of sustainability standards, and its first step was to establish its principles. These are universal statements about sustainability and define the objectives. From the principles flow the criteria and the indicators. Criteria are the conditions to be met in order to adhere to the principles. Indicators are measurable states that indicate whether or not associated criteria are being met. The BSI principles. This time I will read the slide. Obey the law. Respect human rights and labor standards. Manage input, production, and processing efficiencies to enhance sustainability. Actively manage biodiversity and ecosystems. Commit to continuous improvement in key areas of business. The current BSI standards include 21 criteria and relatively small but focused number of indicators. So far 48, but we're not done yet. All of which are currently in the public domain for your scrutiny. Unfortunately for some, and perhaps more fortunately for others, I don't have time to share with you these 48 indicators. But they are all on the website and in the public domain. When developing any system that hopes to set standards, it's also necessary at the outset to decide on how the standards are to be implemented. Options include a benchmark for self-assessment, trade guidelines, rules for procurement, a reporting obligation, as with NIC's RTFO, or certification schemes with third-party certification, which may be either a business-to-business standard or a consumer label. If one is going to attempt to go for a certification system, as is the intention of BSI, then this must be developed in an entirely transparent and inclusive way, which means involving all the stakeholders in the development process. This is vital to ensure international credibility, and engagement needs to be such that it encourages participation through comments, suggestions, and inputs of any kind by anyone. The Better Sugarcane Initiative has decided to follow the procedures recommended by ISEAL to ensure that the standards developed have the widest possible acceptance. ISEAL is the International Social and Environmental Accreditation and Labelling Alliance that has developed a code of practice for setting social and environmental standards. Discussions, presentations, workshops, including this one, are all part of reaching out process within ISEAL. I would appreciate and strongly encourage you all to get online and have your say about BSI. And how it's going about the setting of its standards that will lead to a certification process and its content. It is imperative that the participation reflects a balance in subject matter, expertise, and geographic scope. While trying to determine the criteria, a set of guidelines were used to ensure consistency with the aspirations of the membership of BSI. clear definition of what is to be assessed and why, available data, quantifiable empirical data, not qualitative judgment, coverage, inclusion of key aspects, avoidance of duplication and needless complexity, materiality, impacts requiring active management, use of composite metrics where appropriate, ability to audit by third parties. It is possible, no, in fact it's likely, that additional indicators will appear in time as global conditions and expectations change. It is the belief of BSI members that a good standard is equally applicable anywhere within its industry and has full geographic scope. It is also focused on achieving outcomes rather than presenting methods for reaching these outcomes. It is for this reason that the BSI has attempted to set indicators which measure outcomes and the impacts of their activities rather than recording the existence of good practices. It is important to differentiate between the standards and better management practices. BMPs are a means to an end and not an end in itself. The BSI standards are also different to ISO 14001 standards, which focus on organizational process and not products or impacts. BSI members also concur that credibility comes with metrics, and that without metrics, certification programs can become subjective rather than science-based. Right now, we're in the middle of choosing appropriate metrics, and it's not simple. Maintaining the balance between enough to have credibility and as few as possible to make the auditing process practical, as well as pitching at the right level for a global standard, is a huge challenge. Furthermore, setting baseline values represents another challenge still to be faced by the team. I must say that the independent working groups that we are using are doing a fantastic job in trying to put this together. BSI established 3 working groups with relevant practices to identify the criteria. And they cover social and labour issues, process and mill issues, and agronomic practices. Additionality metrics provides a methodology that can be used as a means of assessing ongoing improvement by monitoring how values of the metrics change over time. The intention is not to have the standard as a best achievable, but as a true reflection of what experts define as a minimum acceptable economic level that can realistically be achieved by responsible operators. It is also imperative to mention that the BSI expects compliance with the standard to be a journey, and that membership to BSI will therefore not be predicated on meeting the standard, but on having an aspiration of working towards the standard. It is clearly evident for some time already that Brazilian sugarcane industry has the aspiration to be sustainable in the broadest sense of the word. That can be seen by various initiatives already underway in Brazil, including UNICA's timely participation in BSI as a member of the Management Committee, and hot off the press, their program of cane cutter retraining to allow for mechanical harvesting, for example. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let me return to the question that I was asked. Certification, how do we get there and why? I added the last bit because I believe it's relevant. Let me start with the why. Because it's the right thing to do, as I've already mentioned. But right things are not always done at the right time, and so there must be some benefit in adopting the standard if we are to get global buy-in from producers and processors. These benefits might include a means of self-assessment and demonstration of performance improvement, a means of benchmarking against others, income from trading of certificates for sustainable sugar and ethanol, which I'm sure could be extended to molasses and cogeneration, making global reach one's product possible, management of risk and liabilities, enhancement of brand image and reputation, I apologize. And finally, one that's not on the slide here, one universal methodology rather than however many were on Géraldine's slide when she started this session. The reality is that in the long run, it is expected that conforming to such standards will save money as inputs such as energy and raw materials are used more efficiently. Losses and wastage is minimized and manpower is used more productively. It is certainly one of the objectives of BSI to achieve a system of standards which results in benefits to producers that outweigh any costs. This is the third leg of the triple bottom line stool, the economic impact. The reality of the situation, ladies and gentlemen, though, is that early adopters might gain some cash in their pocket. But if you ask me as an individual, Daudi Lelijveld, without any hats on, I honestly believe that being a sustainable producer, operator, farmer, anywhere in the supply chain, individual, will become a pre-qualification just to play in this space. Sustainability in itself. Now to the how. The sugar industry has an obligation to run its activities in a sustainable way. This is an obligation to society as well as to its consumers and clients. We believe, and the intention is clear, BSI will provide a framework on a global basis to assist the industry through this journey. But it will only do so with the involvement of all of you. So if you ask me how, the answer is simple. With your help, and more importantly, your participation. Right now, you can all do this through public consultation process. But it's much more sustainable to be influential from within. So I implore you, I ask you, I invite you to join the family. Join us in BSI and make certification happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Daudi, for this very comprehensive description of the BSI scheme. I'd like to inform the audience that the BSI team will hold 2 outreach meetings on Thursday in São Paulo. So this is an occasion maybe to become a member, but more importantly, to provide your comments on this sustainability scheme. If you are interested in participating, please contact Daudi and his team at the end of this panel. The speakers up to now describe the different schemes, being voluntary or legally binding schemes that are currently discussed or under development, describing the criteria, the principle, the philosophy. Now I would like to call Rosemary Vianna, who is Director of HGS System and Services Certification in Brazil. HGS is one of the world's leading inspection, verification, testing, and certification company. So she can share with us her views about the practicability of all those schemes. What are the challenges? Are there measurables? Are they costly to implement? What are the challenges in practice of the implementation of this scheme? Rosemary.
Thank you. Muito bem, bom dia a todos. Agradeço a organização do evento por ter convidado a SGS para vir compartilhar aqui hoje com vocês um pouco da nossa experiência e também o que nós colocamos como visão de pontos críticos, ainda desafios que devem ser superados para se conquistar uma certificação no Brasil, dentro da sustentabilidade do etanol. Não vou passar por, obviamente, certificação de produto, e sim tudo que se refere à sustentabilidade. Um programa de certificação, ele é um mecanismo reconhecido internacionalmente e provém uma estrutura organizada para que, através do processo de auditoria, as práticas de uma organização possam ser transparentadas para as partes interessadas. Essas organizações buscam a certificação para ter uma declaração pública do seu nível de conformidade